Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Geisel. This podcast is dedicated to helping you create a life that sets your soul on fire. I believe that is truly possible for everybody, but you have to be willing to do a few things. You have to be willing to let go of your past conditioning. You have to be willing to break free from societal norms. And you have to be willing to get really curious about your life and how you can start to look at it differently. Each week, we will hear stories from people who have done exactly this. People who chose to disrupt the life path they were on, go against the grain, and share the lessons and perspective shifts they had to make along the way. Every episode is committed to not only inspiring you and connecting you with other amazing humans, but actually giving you the tools you need to use this information in your own life so that you continue to evolve and reconnect with your highest self. Are you ready? Let's have some fun. I am so excited to welcome you back to another week of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. And this week, we really have something special in store for you. And that is an interview with Kyle Depiesse. Kyle is a mentor and friend of mine. He really helped Andrew and sparked our financial journey of making sure that we could live a life of freedom that we wanted to live. And his story is just very relatable. He climbed the corporate ladder only to find that it's really not what he wanted. It affected his health, his relationships, and so much more. Kyle is now the creator and founder of the Reaching Beyond experience, which is rooted in assisting others achieve their highest level of fulfillment and how they connect with others and connect with themselves and how they build their careers. So after 15 years in corporate America, after hitting rock bottom and being completely burned out, Kyle left everything to start designing a life around fulfillment. Since 2015, he has spent a season as a stay-at-home dad, finished an Ironman, started his own business, and started a podcast, and along with his wife, paid off almost $400K to become completely debt-free. Now he leverages his story to design destination experiences and coaching offerings to help his clients get clarity where they need to build their definition of a fulfilling life. So as we get into this episode, there's so much that you are going to be able to take from this, but join us as we talk about how you can start to set a vision for your own life and how you can start using that vision to maybe make some short-term sacrifices in order to benefit you in the long term. We talk about how being a stay-at-home dad and how that has given him some of the most clarity yet, and why we really need to ignore other people's opinions of what you should have in your life. So as we go on, we will also talk, the post show is all about this question on how can we live a more exciting life. And so make sure you stay in tune for that. But let's just dive in because you're going to get so much from this and I cannot wait to see what you take from this episode. So without further ado, let's go. Welcome, Kyle. I am so pumped to have you here. And seriously, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stacy. I am excited to be here with you.
So before we get into your story and talk a little bit more about money and finances and really just like living life on your terms, I have a couple of questions so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Are you up for that?
I'm game.
They're really hard.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Don't ask me the hard ones then, just the easy ones.
Okay, I'll skip to just the easy ones. All right, where are you from and where are you living now?
From a small town in southeast Wisconsin called Random Lake. So most people probably have never heard of that and they're wondering what that is, where that is, but it's in between kind of Green Bay and Milwaukee. And then we call home the Northwoods of Minnesota right now. We moved from the Minneapolis area in October of 2020 up to here to be on a lake, and we love it.
Oh my gosh, lake living is truly the best.
It is.
It is. There's just something about being able to go out and be on the water anytime you want. That feels really good, except for when it's frozen.
Yes. Well, you can still do things when it's frozen, but yes, it's a little bit different.
It's a little different. So, okay, tell us a little bit more about your home life, like family, pets,
yes,
all the goods. What do you want to share?
I've been married to an amazing woman. Her name is Lois, and there's not many Loises at her age. So everyone remembers that because it's a unique name. We've been married for 8 years. We have one child. His name is Callahan, Cal for short, and he is 4. And then we rescued a pit bull blue heeler from the Humane Society. His name is Luther, and he is 8 years old.
Oh my gosh. That's so fun. How long ago did you rescue him?
The year we got married. So we were married in
Oh.
January of 13, and we brought him home on Beaujolais Day, which is, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I think someone's gonna correct me, so I'm not even gonna say it, but it's sometime in November.
Okay. All right. I don't think I even knew you had a dog.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
I don't think the dog gets enough playtime on your Instagram.
He's kind of an interesting one. Like, we're here in the woods, and so you think the dog would love to be outside and roam, and he does, but he loves to stay really close to us, especially me, because I did a lot of the training with him when he was young. So he's pretty close to me. He doesn't like the fire. We have a fire pit out here. And so he's just kind of a nervous, timid dog, but he enjoys going for walks, and there's no leash. And so he loves that stuff.
Oh, I bet. Okay, so I know that you do. You're a lot about experiences, kind of like I am. So so far, what has been your favorite place to travel?
Oh gosh. Oh, so anyone who loves to travel is a bit uneasy about this question, because they're going to say back to you, Stacy, am I traveling on my own? Am I with friends? Am I with my wife? Am I with my son? So they want to clarify that, but I won't do that. And I will just say I loved Ireland. I've been there a handful of times, and there's something about Ireland that just calls me. I don't know what it is. I've got some Irish heritage. It's beautiful there. The people are warm and inviting, and there's music and Guinness so close to the actual source of it. And there's just something about it. So I'm going to say, and then the golf, I don't know if I mentioned golf, but the golf there is incredible.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to sound probably not very intelligent for a second, but I don't know how Andrew is, and his brothers and his dad are going to the British Open next year. Yeah.
Oh.
Next July. And I don't know how close that is to Ireland, but I know they're going, and they're super stoked about all the golf there.
Well, the British Open switches between the British Isles, so I don't know which year where it is, but it could be Ireland,
Yeah.
it could be England, it could be I don't even know, but it's beautiful.
I know it's in St. Andrew.
Oh,
that's all
it
I know.
is. Okay, cool. Yeah, then you're in Scotland, and oddly enough, I just have a book here, a course called Scotland. You should get this for Andrew. Super cool. Yeah, the author's name is Tom Coyne. He was just on my podcast. Tell Andrew this. He played every links course in Scotland, or I think he played like 100, some of them in 50 days. So, and then he writes about it. So really fascinating. Get him that book before he goes there.
I will. I'm probably going to have to get it on Audible, because the chances of him reading it is slim to none. But I'll make sure that happens. Okay. So where is someplace you haven't gone yet that you want to go?
Really good one. And oddly enough, I was up late last night, just kind of thinking about different experiences for my business. And I just happened to come across on YouTube, like bucket list places. And there was a theme with a lot of them, and they were in Italy. And my wife has always wanted to go to Italy again. I hate to go back to wine, but great wine there, great views, great history. There's so much to it. So I'm just going to say, in general, we would love to go to Italy.
I don't think you've talked about wine. You talked about Guinness.
Okay. All right. Well, but I sound like I have a problem. I don't. I appreciate good wine or beer or something like that.
Kyle, this is a judgment-free place.
Okay,
no, but we're all good. Okay. So this one is hard, and I know that, but I'm going to first one that comes to your mind is, what is your favorite book?
The first one that comes to mind is A Million Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller, who is pretty famous for Story Brand. But most people don't know that he wrote a few other books before that. And the reason why I like it, and I think everyone should read it, but the reason why I liked it and what I got out of it is essentially what he's talking about. He poses a question to the reader, which is your life interesting? And that is a really deep question when you think about it. And you get to define what interesting looks like. And as we sit here, you're recording in front of your RV, and I'm like, that's someone who has defined what an interesting life is, and they're going after it. And that is so amazing to see that. And I love the support and cheer that on. And so I read that book. And after that book, did an Ironman, paid off our mortgage, started a business, became a stay-at-home. Like there's just so many things that we just were intentional about living our life. And that's what that book calls the reader into. And so it's beautiful.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. I can't believe I've never written that. Yeah, and for everybody who's watching or listening, this is the first
Yeah.
podcast interview that is outside of the RV in nature. So I'm so excited about that, and I'm excited to check that book out because no, we can get. I have one more question, but we can get more into that on just really looking at your life and I think a lot of people are unhappy because of they look at life and they see monotony.
Mhm.
And like we are legit right now 5 minutes from our house.
Mhm.
5 minutes. Like somebody is in our house through Airbnb and we are 5 minutes away and we have never even explored this part of where we are. So
Yeah.
not saying that you have to do all these extravagant things to make life more interesting, but it's just Andrew, even this morning, he was like, well, I'm really getting out of my comfort zone. I have to take a shower in this RV and go to work. Like this is just really interesting. So, but it'll be a good story at some point.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, so last question is what was one of your favorite things to do as a kid?
Mm. So I grew up in, as I mentioned, Random Lake, Wisconsin, and we we would do a couple things in the summer that I really enjoyed, and it would be camping, and it wasn't very far from our house either. It might have been maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then the other thing is we would always go to Wisconsin Dells, which maybe you're familiar with if you're a Midwest person. Yeah, you maybe did. So we would go to like Noah's Ark and do all the water parks and do the mini golf and overeat on pizza and a bunch of soda and stuff like that. So I'd say those two things was just in the summertime, being outside and just having a ton of fun with no care in the world.
I love that. I actually have never been to the Wisconsin Dells, and my husband's like family is in Wisconsin, and they always go, but we haven't made it a
Hmm.
point. So we're gonna have to make it a point because that sounds like right up my alley.
Yes, it's great for adults. Like I mean, you can act like a kid, but there's also stuff geared for adults, so it's really cool.
Like cocktails. No.
Like cocktail. I mean, I didn't want to say it because I've already painted a picture for myself, but there's that, and Andrew will like it because there's a lot of golf. So there's golf, there's water, there's lakes. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff to do.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you, Kyle, for entertaining that. So I
Yeah.
want to dive in some more. So, for anybody who doesn't know, Kyle is he's a mentor of ours. He's a friend, and he really taught us how to look at money different. Like he was such a gift in a moment where Andrew and I knew we needed to make some changes in our life, but really in the finance department of our life. And we weren't quite sure where to start. So when I look at you, Kyle, like and I'm sure I'm not the only one, like I think freedom and experiences, like you are truly the epitome of going against societal norms and creating a life that lights you up. So my first question for you is like, where did it start? Was it like a single moment? Was it a series of moments that like had you start looking at your life and your finances different? Like, where did that all begin?
Oh, where to unpack this? You'd have to go, back to 2014, 15 when I was in corporate America. And I was like many people, climbing the corporate ladder, trying to get this version of success that society tells us is successful, a title, an office, all that stuff, cars, houses, toys. And I got it and it felt really lonely. And I was completely burned out chasing it. And the problem with being in that position, I hated my job. That spills over into every category of life. My relationship with my wife was not its best. My relationship with myself and my health was not very good. But I was stuck. And the reason why I was stuck is because we were living at and above our means. So every single day, Stacy, I wanted to go into my place of employment and just say, I'm done. I quit. I'm done. Not even a 2 week. I'm just done. I couldn't. I could not. We had no plan. We had no money saved. We were making good money, um, but we were broke. And I said, "Well, what is wrong with this?" Because I thought I was doing everything that we were told to do, and it wasn't working. And so I said, well, there's got to be something wrong. So that's kind of where it started. And the one moment that I can remember, I'll never forget it, was a Thanksgiving. And I believe this was 2013, or I think, no, it was 14, sorry, 2014. I go into work on Thanksgiving morning. And I was in e-commerce at that time. I was slinging video games. I was in charge of Target.com, Walmart.com, Amazon, all of that stuff. So you would go buy a video game from there. We shipped it from our warehouse. So you can imagine like Q4, Black Friday, that time period, super busy. That's where we make the majority of our money. So we were having family visit from out of town, and they were staying with us. And I was going into work on Thanksgiving morning around 4:00 in the morning to get some work done. And I get there and I look around and I'm like, I'm the only one here. What am I doing? I've just left my family at home who's visiting me from out of state. It's a holiday. It's Thanksgiving. It's meant to be with family. And here I am. What am I doing? What's it all for? And so that was really the moment where I said, something's got to change. Now, it took a while to happen, but that was like, this is it. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. So we can resonate. Andrew and I don't know if we ever told you this. Maybe we did, because we met at Best Buy when we were like, I mean, this was so long ago now, but do we know like the Black Friday end of the year stuff? Like, I will never forget,
Madness.
Yeah. Leaving our house at 3 a.m. to show up and be there. And then like once it started happening on Thanksgiving, it was even more of like, oh my gosh, like this is awful. So definitely can kind of resonate there. So like, I think that so many people can resonate with what you said about just feeling stuck. And it's actually funny because I was talking to somebody the other day and she said, she goes, the Joneses are broke. Like that was like, and I was like, I was just kind of started laughing. She's like, the Joneses don't have any money. They just have a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah. And the reason why is they're financed. They're financed through the gills, because in America, mostly what we do is if we think we can afford something, do you know what that really means? Is can I fit the payment into my budget? And if you keep doing that and you keep doing that, before you know it, you're at your means, and any disruption to pay, you're sunk. You're screwed because you're relying on that income. And there's no freedom in that. But we look good, right? We look good. We got the clothes, we got the toys, we got the cars, all that stuff. But I don't know. We went through Dave Ramsey's stuff. I like some of his stuff. I don't like some of his stuff. But I love what he says. He's like, we end up buying things we can't afford to impress people we don't even like and we don't even know. And there's so much truth to that. But that's how it happens, is we say, well, if I can fit the payment into my budget and I keep thinking that way, that's how I can have all this stuff.
Oh, and I know we resonate with that so hard. And I'm sure so many people that are listening do too. So, okay. So this all happens, right? So what specific changes did you start to make? Like you said, you guys became very intentional with where you wanted to go. So what was that vision like for you? And like, what were some of the specific changes that you had to make along that path?
I think you have to have a vision first. So where are you going? What's it all for? You've heard a lot, like, what's your why? All that stuff. It just comes down to vision. Like, where do you want to go with your life? What does it look like to you? And you've got to really dial that in and make it pretty crystal clear. Not just that kind of want to do this. It kind of looks like this. No, like, what exactly does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? All of those things. And so we got really clear on what that was. And for us, it was location independence and location freedom. And it's not living in a place where we're not inspired daily. And 2020 was a gift for us because we asked ourselves the question, well, if we can work wherever we want, why are we living where we don't love to live? And so we moved. It's a simple question can change your life. And that was a question we asked. So for us, it was starting with a vision. It was saying, what do we want our life to look like? Not what other people want our life to look like. Stop playing by someone else's rules. Is what do we want for our life? So we got really clear on that, which then enables you to say, yeah, in the short term, I can make some sacrifices because I know I'm going towards this and I really, really want that. And you have to just fall in love with the idea that where I'm going is way more important than these little short-term gratifications and short-term, I almost said expenses, but short-term wants that are just taking you away from where you want to go. And you're okay on that. I mean, look at you guys. You guys did the same thing. You made some what would look like quote unquote sacrifices, but for you guys, like it's not. This is getting us to our goal faster, and that's what we're trying to do. So I actually stayed home. So partway through our journey of paying off debt, we recognized that my wife was in a position where she could crush it. She was in a job where it was almost 100% commission. We were watching the trajectory she was on. And I said, how do I help? And in that instance, it looked like me staying home with our son, Cal, who at the time, when I stayed home, when I was promoted to a stay-at-home dad, he was 3 months old. I never thought I was going to do that in my life ever. But we knew that if we did this for a period of time, it would slingshot us forward. So, and it did. And here we are. And so that gift of staying home with Cal gave me the gift of clarity, which is time to figure out what do I want to do with my life. And then I was able to develop a couple brands as a result. So here we are today.
Here we are. Well, and I love a few things that you said. Like one being that, and again, like Andrew and I have like Kyle really pushed us to look at things and say like, what are you willing and to? I hate to use the word give up because like it's just sometimes those words don't feel great, but it's not really like a sacrifice because when you start to look at things differently, nothing's permanent. And
Mhm.
I think that was that was something that we started to live by. Nothing is permanent. So you know what? Like we live on one car. We get rid of like my car, which is just a funny story in itself, like right before COVID hit. And then we got rid of his truck, which he didn't want to do. And we bought something that we didn't have a payment on. But what we kept saying is like, nothing's permanent. Like, if you are truly unhappy without your truck at some point, you can literally walk into a place and finance a truck and get something back. Like, but be willing to experiment with it, like to
Yeah.
not have it. And we really haven't missed it. But from our experience, because we even went through our house and this whole idea of scarcity, like most of the world lives in a very scarce mindset around things. And people think like, obviously it's never like never having enough and things like that, which is true. But when Andrew and I were going through our house and we were like, what do we really need in here? Like, and what are we willing to give up? And something that we realized through that process was that it was really hard for us to give certain things up. And when we dissected that, it was because there was a fear that we would never get it back. And so that's a very scarce mindset to go into it with is like, if I let go of this, I may never get it back. And we had to push through that so many times and just say, nope, like we're not using it right now. So we're going to let it go because if we need it again, we can get it again. And by doing that, we let go of our boat that we loved more than like we loved it so much. We let go of a few vehicles. We let go of a lot of stuff. And at the end of the day, like we didn't actually miss it. And then now we're sitting here in a very different situation. And because we were willing to let go of those things.
That's that's incredible. There's so much there that's incredible. I mean, you've got where to even start? But number one, you guys are really clear on your values. Like what's important to you? Like what is truly important to you? I believe in values-based spending, right? And you guys looked at where are we spending? Does it align with our values? Does it bring us joy? If it doesn't, we can go without for a little bit. You can get another boat. Like you can get another. You had said this
Yeah.
before. Like if you hate not having a car payment, just go to the local dealer and in an hour you can be back in a car payment. Like it's not that big of a deal. If you hate it, just go back into it. So what you had said, just be willing to experiment with it is really powerful. And you guys took this and you ran with it and you got so far ahead because you got such strong level of awareness to this stuff. And that's really powerful. You can tell that you guys have done a lot of work with that. And so that's really strong. And I love working with people like that because there's not much to convince. Like we can talk about it. I can show you a path, and you're like, all right, we're running down the path, and you guys are just rock stars. So it's been a blast.
Well, we appreciate it. And like I said, like the reason that we're here is because we were willing to look at our situation and say we're not satisfied. Like this is not what life should be. So we, like they always say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And like you came into our life at the perfect time and you were able to help slingshot us forward because you were willing to ask the hard questions. And I think Andrew needed you to tell him, not me to tell him. But whatever, we could go down that road some other time. So I want to touch on like becoming a stay-at-home dad, because I think that for a lot of men, what they do is their identity.
Mhm.
Being the provider of for the family is like something that they cling to. Um, and I get that because that's like what our society has created. But how did you like so I mean, did you go into it willingly? There's some like reluctant, where you're like, I'm not really sure. Or like, and how did you kind of break through? I mean, how did you tell people? Did it feel good to tell people you were a stay-at-home dad? Like, what was that like for you?
I so boy, it's such a good, and I rarely get asked this question because I think people just don't, either they're afraid to ask me because of my response or they don't want to go there. So thanks for asking me. But first off, I knew that I had to, like, this was our path, and we both recognized that. And I was completely ignorant to what it would actually look like. I had no idea what I was doing. Zero. I mean, Cal was 3 months old, and I'm trying to give him a bottle, and he does not want the bottle, and he's screaming his face off. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm doing my best here. So it was really hard at first. And then you're right. I mean, we have our identities tied up in our profession so much, especially as males. So if I ever go out, or Lois and I, and we go out and we meet people, like, what's the first question we ask here? It's, what do you do for work? And so this happens, handful of times, dozen plus times. I'm sitting in a social setting, guys are kind of congregating over here, the women are over here, and the guys are like, so what do you do for work, and what do you do for work? And I know the questions coming to me, and I'm just like, oh, please don't ask, please don't ask. And yep, Kyle, what do you do for work? And I'm like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. And it's one of two responses. It gets super awkward, or the other response is, that is so cool. Like, what an amazing opportunity to be with your son like that. And it took me a long time to get used to that because my ego was tied up in my profession. And it was hard at first, but I got to a point where I was like, I'm a stay at home dad. I love it. It's great. I have an amazing relationship with my son. And I don't care what people think about that, because what my wife and I are doing in our family is our decision. I don't, what other people say doesn't really matter, but it took me a long time to get there, a really long time to get there. So, but I did, and I love it. And in many regards, I'm still the full time stay at home with him, and I love it. We have a great time together. It doesn't mean it's not challenging, it's not hard, but I really enjoy it. So it took me a while, though. I had my ego tied up in it, and it was a really hard thing for a long time.
Well, I think I think people feel that way with a lot of things. Like, am I going to be judged for this? Like, and one thing that I love that you were able to do is you kind of started to train people how to respond. And people miss this, right? And I like when people are making a big change in their life, and they're afraid to tell people. I'm like, if you are timid telling somebody and you are unsure, they are going to be extremely unsure too. So you're like, with your response of I'm a stay-at-home dad and I love it and it's amazing, that all of a sudden you're like training people to be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that could be really cool. But what I also love about it is that you're giving people permission to do things different. And somebody has to pave the way, right? And I think about this when it comes to hiking all the time. This is maybe such a weird thing, but I'm always like, who was the first person to walk this path? And how hard must that have been? Because I can barely stay on it and it's clearly defined. So like who did this? But I think we can like relate that to life. Like
Yeah.
somebody has to be the person that's willing to pave the way and give other people permission to do the same thing. So I think it's really amazing that you're able to truly own that. And like, why can't it be that way?
Yeah. Yeah. And
You know,
it,
I think,
it, it became an ethos for me and for the brand is like, because so many people, male especially, they might be crushing it at work, but they suck at home. Like they're a bad husband, they're a bad father, they're not present, they don't go to, they don't have a relationship with their kids. Maybe they're on their fourth marriage, but they're successful at work. And to me, it's like, I'm not going to make that trade off in my life. I don't think you should trade off, your personal balance sheet for your professional one. I don't think being successful at work while failing at home is a good thing. We shouldn't strive for that. There is a way to integrate them. And that just became a full offshoot for me. And it was born because of those instances, sitting in a social circle and saying, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I love it. I got a great relationship with my son. Nothing's perfect, but I love it. And so I don't think I have to sacrifice. And so it really became this stake in the ground moment for me where I don't sacrifice that anymore. I used to, but not anymore.
yeah, it's so good. So with what you just said, sometimes when we have to quote unquote give things up, right? We do that and then we welcome other things into our life. So you've alluded to this a few times that all of these changes that you have made have allowed you to really get where you are. So what do you believe are like the opportunities that came from you being willing to make those changes and do things different than maybe somebody else would choose to do
Hmm.
them?
I think it's not playing by other people's rules. I think it's not playing by what other people think you should be doing. I think it's getting really clear on what do you want to do? What does it look like for you? What does it look like for you to live an interesting life? What does that mean to you? And then how do you just start doing it? Like, why? It's amazing how we are really under the grip of other people, whether it's, subconsciously, whether it's overtly and direct, but we give too much power to other people and permission over our life. And I just stopped playing that. I exited the game. I left the game, and I'm just kind of doing things my own way in terms of building brands and stuff. And then with my family, we're doing our own thing. I stay home mostly. I've got Cal. I love it, and it works great for us. Like it works for us. But it was intentional. And so I think to answer your question, it was I'm not going to play by other people's rules. I'm going to create our own.
Yeah. And if more people could do that, I was like, I talk about this pretty often is that if more people lived their life to simply for them to be happy, we would solve a lot of the world's problems because everybody would be happier. But we live our life trying to make everybody else happy. And it's just ass backwards in so many ways.
100%. And if you ask anyone at the end of their life, at the end of the dock, when they're sitting there, regret is one of the biggest things that comes up. So if we know what the end kind of looks like, stop playing the game. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So just stop playing the game, start your own game, play your own game.
Okay, so with that, like if stop playing the game, how does somebody begin to stop playing the game? I mean, I have my answers, but I want to hear yours.
Okay. I think the very first thing, because I talk about work life rhythm and how do you get into rhythm? You can't get into any sort of rhythm or balance in life if you hate what you do. You will be walking around with this level of resentment, cynicism, um, dare I say, hatred in your heart for other people because you may see them doing what they love. So, it's easier to throw a stone at that person than take that stone and start building your own thing. So in my mind, you have to start with what lights you up. Where's the intersection of what you're really good at? Where's there a need? And then how do you solve that need? So it sounds simple. It's hard. It sounds simple, but we overcomplicate it. So I think just looking at where was I looking at this statistic? 8 out of 10 Americans strongly dislike or are disengaged with their work. That's a big number. That's a big problem. So if you don't like what you're doing, like you can't change it overnight, but you can make the decision to change it overnight. So when I was burned out in corporate America, I didn't know 5, 6 years from now that I would be an entrepreneur, stay at home dad doing this thing. But I started down the path. And that's all it takes is you can make a decision immediately. And then you can start to put a plan together to say, okay, I'm here. I want to be here. How do I get there? Right. And you and I both know it looks like a lot of growth and discovery and getting into the messiness of that stuff. Hire a coach, take a course, listen to podcasts, read books. You can get there and you can speed up that process if you're willing to invest in yourself. But the number one thing that you have to do, and you've got to start here, is if you don't like what you do, fix that. Don't do that anymore. Like life's too short to be doing something that you hate because we spend so much time at work.
Yes.
Was that your answer too?
I have some other thoughts, but
Okay.
no, like that's really, really good. And I do believe that you're correct. Like so many people spend so much time and energy complaining about what's going on, but they don't take that. Like if you were to take that same amount of energy and put it towards like making small steps to get you in a different place. And I think that people think it's all or nothing. Right. And that's another place where we get pretty jacked up because if you are not in a place to just quit your job, okay. But then like Kyle said, what are the small steps that you can start to take in order to make a change? But people like to think about what they want to do and then they don't act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for like the lifestyle that Andrew and I want, like, and you heard this from Kyle too, like his transition started 6 years ago, right? And so these things don't happen overnight and people don't give themselves sometimes enough time. But for Andrew and I, like the life that we want to live, we know that it doesn't have him tied to a job. He works a full-time job right now, and that's not a problem. It's just a matter of we look at our life though, and now we love to give. So Kyle knows this. We love to give time. We like to give money. Like we were joking when we took Kyle's course that like we realized that we'd love to like buy people dinner. So now it was like we had to double our budget for that because like we would do it whether or not like we had the money to do it or not. So now we were just like, well, we'll just take something away from somewhere else so that we can double that because we love to give. And so we've been looking at that aspect. And I think a lot of times people, they think I will be able to give when once I get here, once I'm finally at this place. And quite honestly, we started to think that way too. Our hearts, we have a big heart in Guatemala. We have been on a couple of mission trips that truly were probably the launching pad for us changing our life in a lot of ways. And we want to give back to them in ways. And we're like, okay, well, once we're here, we'll be able to do that. And then I was like, hold on, there's opportunity everywhere. And we really want to start working towards building more experiences for people because just like you, we believe that that's what life is about. And so we're like, we can put together this amazing experience that's going to bring couples together, but also give to the people in Guatemala. And so like, there's always a solution if you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew doesn't have to stop working to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he loves work, like we always think like you should leave a W-2 and you should become like, no, there are people who love being a W-2 and they love their job. We have to stop this. Like you got to get out of no, if you love it, you love it. But to your point, like just make a plan. We all know how to make goals. You just reverse engineer the goal. Like, hey, in 12 to 18 months, I want to be out of my corporate job doing this. Okay. How are you going to do that? How much money do you need? How do you get there? It really isn't that hard when you just sit back and think about how do I make this transition over a period of time. So we overcomplicate it. We think it's harder than it is. And it's just too easy to complain.
I agree. So let me ask you this though, because I think that just like what we were talking about in the beginning, a lot of goals are set because they're very logical. They're very and I think that something that misses the mark for people is that they don't have a heart-centered goal they don't have something that really tugs at their heartstrings that they really want because they haven't taken the time to figure out what that is in the first place. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think goal setting is a skill, like, and goal setting is a skill. Goal getting is a whole nother skill, and they're two very different things. Anyone can goal set, but the process of accomplishing that goal is very different. So there's a few things that I would say I would agree with you, and so I'll add a few more things to it. Number one, a lot of times the goal isn't really your goal. Like, it's a goal we think we should have because other people are doing it or say we should do it. But is your goal really your goal, or is it someone else's goal? And then secondly, most people go from, they set small, tiny little goals. And then all of a sudden they set this huge goal, like to the moon, and they don't get it. And they're like, screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. Like, it didn't work. I'm not good at it. I'm a failure. Now all your limiting beliefs get resurfaced, and you can say to yourself, told you so, loser. Like, I told you, you're not going to get it. And you just get deflated, and then you stop doing it. So instead of like build the muscle, right? Like, I'm not just going to go to the gym right now and try and squat 475 pounds. I'm going to slowly work my way up to it. And so I think for most people, get used to building the muscle of setting and accomplishing goals, and then take your moonshot. Like, don't just
Mm.
go for the moon immediately.
I love that you're saying this because I have had this conversation quite a bit lately. And it's the same thing as what you're talking about that we have that, and especially in the entrepreneur world, it is like, it is a badge of honor to this whole shoot for the moon and you'll still hit the stars. Like, bullshit, you will. What you're going to do is you're going to end up shooting for the moon, not hitting the moon nor the stars, and then you're going to give up because
Yeah.
you don't think that you deserve it, because you don't think that you're worth it, because you do think that that's what everybody else has done. But just like Kyle's saying, like, set goals that allow you to actually reach them, because then you're building that muscle and you're going to, every time you do that, you can set a little bit bigger goal and a little
Yeah.
bit, but you have to build that trust and that belief in yourself. And I think that
Yeah.
that's a big thing that people are missing is the belief in themselves to
Self
actually make
belief.
it happen.
Huge. It's huge. And it's building belief in yourself that you can say, I've done this before. I can do this, and I'm going to do it again. And there's probably neuroscience behind it that I'm not smart enough to figure out. I don't know, but intuitively we know this. Intuitively, in our heart, in our head, we know that this is true, but we rarely do it because it's not sexy, because so and so just did a $500,000 launch and so just did this. And I'm like, well, yes, but they've probably accomplished a lot of failures and learnings along the way that are way ahead of me. And so I'm going to say congratulations to them, support, cheer them on. But here's where I'm at, and here's the goal I'm going towards.
And cutting out the noise. I love that. Like, you have to celebrate other people. It's amazing, but you have to cut the noise out and
Yeah.
know, again, this comes back to knowing what are you going after? What is the life that you want? Because I see this, the comparisonitis that goes on, especially with social media and different things. It's funny. I catch myself doing it and I'm like, wait, I don't want that life.
Yeah.
That's not even what I want. Like,
Yeah.
why do I care what this person is doing when, like, it's actually because we have become very clear on what we want. But if you're not very clear on what you want, then all of a sudden you start to want what everyone else has. And
Yes. Yep. And
yeah,
I think social media has taken the lid off comparison, because we don't just compare ourselves to our physical neighbor anymore. We compare ourselves to people that are on social media that are rolling around in these helicopters, these car, like, ooh, I want that now. But it's very like it's taken the lid off comparison. You've got to be really careful. So we moved to the Northwoods. I'm growing a beard and I'm trying not to pay much attention to social media anymore.
that's my next goal.
Yeah,
No,
there
I'm
you
just
go.
kidding. I'm not going to grow a
Ba-
beard.
Baby
Um,
steps.
no, it's funny. Actually, we got back from like a 7-week trip, and it was just Andrew and I. And I mean, we had had friends along the way, like come meet us and different things. But it was funny because there was some shenanigans going on back home, and um, I was like, I totally get why people go like live in the woods by themselves. Like, but the lesson that I was going through was that it is like it's easier sometimes to push people away than to unconditionally love them. And um, but it's I definitely understand like needing to put the blinders on sometimes and just being like
Yeah.
not thinking so much about it. So, okay. So I have two more questions for you that I
Okay.
want to hit really quick. So the first one is, what do you feel was like the hardest part of this process for you?
Because I'm a recovering people pleaser, it would always be about what others are thinking and what others are saying. And it was releasing myself from that invisible grip that had on me and in my life, because we were trailblazing a little bit. I mean, you had said the hiking example earlier. No one in my family is an entrepreneur. No one in my wife's family is an entrepreneur. All of my wife's family, they're stay-at-home moms, and I became the stay-at-home dad. So it was a bit strange, but I had to release myself from what others are thinking. And a lot of times we put this, like family loves, like they love me, they don't care. And for some reason I thought like they would judge me for it. So a lot of times we just like push our own stuff on what other people might be thinking of us, and it's not even true. So I've learned a lot through that, and that's been a really big growth journey for me, is releasing myself from what I may perceive others are thinking.
I love that. Yeah, I think we judge ourselves more than other people judge us. And there's always going to be people who are judging you, but like they're going to do that whether you're going after what you want or
Yeah.
whether you don't go after what you want. So you might as well just go after it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so good. And I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that because, like a lot of us have that people pleasing type of mentality. And so I love what you said about being able just to release the grip of that because
Mhm.
it is it's important. And it was funny because Andrew is very much a people pleaser and he knows it. Like this isn't like if he listens to this, which he will, he knows. But it was funny because on our 7 week trip, it was like it was just him and I, and there was no expectations. And he
Mhm.
all of a sudden he didn't have anybody to please. And it was like, I think it was a pretty defining moment for him. We'll have
Yeah,
to talk to him about that someday. But
that's
it was just
cool.
kind of that feeling of like, oh, like I can just do what I want to do. Like this kind of feels good. Try it out,
Yeah,
experiment, people.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, okay, so the last question I have for you is: what is one lesson you feel like you are in the middle of learning?
Hmm. Wow, that's a really good one. Um, in 2021, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I've been wanting to write a book, and if anyone's ever done that, they're listening. They'll get this immediately. When you even sit down to think about writing a book, you get the largest imposter syndrome ever creep up on you and attack you. Who are you to write a book? Who's going to read it? Why does it matter? No one cares. So you hear all this stuff come up when you just think about writing a book. And so that's the lesson that I think I'm in the middle of right now, is dealing, because I don't think that ever goes away. I don't think imposter syndrome ever goes away. In fact, if you're not feeling that, you might not be challenging yourself enough. So I'm constantly battling that, whether it's the experiences, because the experiences that I throw, people that are there are more quote unquote successful than me by far. So I've got to deal with that there. And then thinking about writing a book, I'm up against it as well. So I think that'll never go away. And I'm just learning how to get better at that. So that's what I would say.
Okay, yeah, and that imposter syndrome, it'll get you. It'll get you. But I mean, here's the thing: look at all the books that are written. So many books.
Hmm.
Like, why not you?
Hmm.
Right? And there's somebody like if you feel called to write a book, I'm talking to myself here, but I'm talking to you too. That like there's a reason you're being called for that, and that the timing is there, and it's because people need to hear what you have to say,
Mm.
and so just keep going back to that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
my only bit of advice.
Yeah, it's helpful to hear, because as you know, like you need support. You need support on this journey at all levels, all the time, and it's so important to build relationships with people and have that support, because you're going to need it. So, as much as you were talking to me or anyone listening or watching, that's really, or yourself, like it's always important to have that support. So, I appreciate you, and thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you. And I think we covered so much in this interview, and I'm so grateful for you. You just have a fascinating story. Like I said, you're kind of the epitome of what the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast is all about. So thank
Thank
you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. So I
Yes.
know that people are going to want to connect with you more. And honestly, people might not actually know exactly what you do quite yet because we haven't talked about that, which is okay. But here, I would love for you to just give them a glimpse into how they can work with you, how can they connect with you, all the things.
Instagram is probably the best. Kyle_Depiesse. It's a tough one to spell, but I think if you just try to type it out, you'll find
I'll
it.
put it in the show notes too.
Or that too. So, and I love to. I just really enjoy connecting and engaging with people. I get messages, people I don't know that hear my podcast or on someone else's, and I just think it's fun to connect with new people. So I enjoy that. So if you send me a message, I will always respond to it. Unless you send me a creepy one, I won't respond to that. But I love that stuff. I love to engage. One of my favorite things to do is just cheer people on and support people on their journey. So that's that. Like what I do, you'll find it on my Instagram. But I'm just someone who likes to cheer people on and live a life that is big, bold, audacious, and interesting. So I will support you and cheer you on in that journey.
So good. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you more than you know. And you've just been a blessing to have on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Stacy. Thank you.
Here we are at the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast post show. And I want to continue to talk about what Kyle said about how can you make your life more interesting. I loved the way that he said that, and I cannot wait to dive into the book he was talking about. But what I want you to know is that like my version of interesting might not be your version of interesting, and that is 1000% okay. Like this RV is sitting behind me, traveling around in this thing, like Airbnb out of your house, like that might sound like your nightmare. And that's okay because they shouldn't be the same things. But you're never going to be able to figure out what that is if you don't start trying different things, right? So you also don't have to completely uproot your life in order to make it more interesting. So I think that falls into that all or nothing trap, and I don't want anybody to get stuck in that because what you do have to do is take some time to sit down and have some conversations and get more clear on what interesting means to you, right? So make a list of everything that sounds fun to you. So, a game that Kyle introduced us to that Andrew and I play all the time is called Stupid Idea Time. Okay. So thank you, Kyle, for that. But this is where you take 30 minutes. Give yourself a 30 minutes and no less, no more. Give yourself 30 minutes and maybe have a glass or two of wine, depending on, like who you are. You don't have to have that. It's not a requirement, but sometimes it lets you get into a different aspect where you might allow yourself to dream a little bit. So, but what you do is you start to write down anything and everything that sounds fun to you or that you would like to see in your life. Okay. This isn't about what is realistic because that game would suck, but also you don't get to leave anything off the list because it's a quote unquote stupid idea. Because the reality is, some of the ideas that when we have done this that we would have originally thought were just really dumb or really stupid don't look that bad after you go back and you take a look and you're like, okay, maybe that wasn't actually the worst idea. And we have followed through on some of those things and it's helped us get us to where we are today. So I want you to, and like I said, you don't have to completely uproot your life to make it more interesting. Start small. Like, could you simply take a different route to work? Could you ride your bike instead of taking a walk one day? Could you try a new restaurant or coffee shop instead of going back to the same one that you always go to? Maybe book a trip to visit somewhere that you've never been, but you've always wanted to go. And that doesn't have to mean it's some extravagant thing. We found a beautiful waterfall in Indiana, which is like a 5-hour drive from here. So there's things all around us if we start looking for them. Maybe find a new game online that you can play with your kids that none of you have ever played before. Like that can be super fun. And like, I don't know, have a Nerf gun fight with your spouse. We have done that. It's actually super fun. But just finding new ways to be creative and find like using that to create a life that's a little bit more interesting. Like there is no right or wrong. It's simply about trying different things and seeing what really speaks to your soul and what lights you up. But if we don't take the time to actually try new things, then we're never going to know whether those things are going to light us up and actually change our life for the better. So my challenge to you this week is, what is one thing that you can do to make your life more interesting this week? So I don't want you to wait until next week. I don't want you to wait until a month from now. What can you do this week that would make your life a little bit more interesting? Take a photo of whatever that is, tag myself and Kyle on Instagram and share, or you can simply share it with me via text, which is 248-206-3431. So I can come along on your journey. I really want to see these things. I think that having more fun in life and just creating more experiences that are interesting within our lives, whether those be big or small, is really what makes life worth living. So I want to come along with you on that journey. And if you do join the text list, know that you're also going to get some journal prompts throughout the week that are going to help you continue your personal growth journey. So don't miss out on that as well. And that's it for this week. So thank you for listening to today's episode. And remember that for every review of the podcast this month, we are donating $5 to Reality's Chance Animal Sanctuary and Rescue here in Michigan. So they rescue Mustangs, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing that they're doing. They're the most kind-hearted people I have ever met, and the horses are phenomenal. So if you want to be part of changing that and donating to a good cause, just write a review and leave it. It means the world to us, and we can help make the world a better place by donating as well. So until the next episode, keep evolving.